There is a trend. How do I put this? There is a trend in the ELCA of raising up leaders who see themselves as social organizers. And there's an element of that we definitely need. One of the conversations that I'm having in the Conference of Bishops that was going on long before I was elected is how do we encourage, especially our first call pastors, to also remember that they are social engagers and to understand that, like you said, bigger isn't always better. And especially in a synod that is as rural as Nebraska is, how do we find leaders who have the capabilities and the skills to live and work in towns under 5,000-10,000? I consider myself very fortunate because that came really natural to me. My first call was in a town of 350. But having grown up in Wakefield, I was used to small town life. Rural ministry was something I'd been shaped by. We recruited most of our seminarians from suburban colleges, from suburban congregations over the last 30 years. They're just not equipped. We've just not done a good enough job of raising up leaders who are capable in rural ministry. That's something that we're going to be working on. But you're right, it is a struggle.
One of the things I've noticed, we're a small community, we're a small church. Our expectations are rather large. So whether we admit it or not, when we call a pastor, we're actually looking for a 24/7 pastor, 365, which isn't a real good reality. But at the same time, that's still there's no division of duties because we have one pastor and 11 weeks. So it's a challenge from our end. We've never really explored that how do we function very well without a pastor? How do we function with a pastor and make it so that they have a work-life balance that doesn't seem to exist?
That's important self-awareness. Thank you for sharing that. Is there a parsonage in this church? Across the street? Yeah. Okay.
Almost too close.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Okay. There's benefits and drawbacks to that. Absolutely. Yeah. The church that I served in Iowa, the parsonage actually was on the same lot as the church, so I had a 30-second commute to work, which sometimes is really wonderful. Sometimes can make it hard to draw a healthy boundary, and that's a developing piece that ministers need to help congregations with, and congregations need to help ministers with. And if you're aware of it, that's a great starting point. Let me rephrase. Most of us that go into ministry are aware that we are on call 24/7, except for when we're like on vacation or stuff like that. And even then, we make arrangements. But it's a piece where you learn how to, like you said, how to balance. It is certainly not a 9-to-5 job. So
that's your job. I mean, that's what you're hired for. So
yeah.
It's not any different for a minister than it is a store person or whatever you do. A business person. That's your job.
Yep.
I mean, you expect that part of your job.
Yeah.
It's not a drawback or whatever.
Yeah, because you could be at the hospital until 2 in the morning on Tuesday night, and maybe then you've got a funeral Thursday. But if you've done the funeral and you've got your sermon buttoned up for Sunday, maybe you just tell your council president, hey, I put in a ton of hours this week. I'm ready to go for Sunday. I'm gonna take a little bit of comp time this morning and go hit 9 holes of golf, just to kind of give myself a bit of a break. I'm just letting you know, just as a kind of, again, that work-life balance piece again, because if you're working 9 to 5 at the widget factory, if it's 9 o'clock, you're at the widget factory, and that's the way it goes. That's the,
Right.
that's the life.
Your business owner, you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone here running a restaurant? Yeah.
Farmer?
Oh, yeah, that too. Yep. But you know, pastors only work on Sundays too, right?
Yeah, right. Easy job.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. And I like to hear the stories.
I'd like to add one other thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think everybody knows I wrote a letter this week to everybody because I love the ELCA. It's not flawless for sure, but I love the ELCA. And in writing that letter, now I'm hearing from some people about why they're unhappy, which is good. And I think we have to have those conversations. But the thing I keep hearing is, that surprises me, is that many in our congregation believe that ELCA has been heavy-handed and almost, I'm hesitant to use the word authoritarian, but we're very hierarchical, and that the Synod has created problems for us, expectations that we can't meet, which surprises me. When I was on council, I didn't experience that at all, and when I contacted the Synod, I've always had a wonderful response. So I guess that's here, and it's a long history. It's not just recent. The sense of the Synod is directing us too much. And I don't know how widespread, but I've heard that from a few people. And also distrust of where the mission money is going. And when I've been to Assembly, I have purposely gone to every one of them. I know Michelle and I have gone to Assembly together a few times, and we go to each one of those mission booths just to find out where are our dollars going. And it's been exciting. When I was telling Michelle, I was feeling a little guilty. Maybe I haven't conveyed what we learned sufficiently well. Because that's part of what I love about the ELCA. We are out there helping the world better than many denominations.
Bishop, well, also, we're very fortunate in this congregation that we've got an excellent worship team that has stepped up for the last year or so. It's just been unbelievable. I think that's a very positive for this, obviously, for our congregation. I don't know.
Yeah. Where is Diane, by the way?
She's got the pancake.
Okay. Well, she did wonderful this morning. So, and who else on our worship team here? Yeah, thank you. You have a lovely building too, by the way. Sorry, that sounds like I'm surprised. I'm not surprised. Wait, I've just never been here before. You have a lovely building. You've got a lot going for you. So, let's dig into just some more of that conversation. Heather shared a couple of things that she's been hearing in conversation. Like I said, I'm not here to argue you one way or another. I would love to answer your questions with as much honesty as I can manage. As accurately as I can manage, I should say, not that I'm balancing I'm trying to be accurate, not honest. And give you good information so that you can have this, the vote that you set up and make sure that as a body you're making the decision that is most appropriate for you as a community. So what other questions can I answer? Yeah,
how does the Nebraska Senate, how does it work with the National Senate? I mean, I've seen videos on the national, every 3 years. I'm very disappointed in our national assembly that I've seen.
Okay. Say more about that. Like, what specifically was troubling for you?
Well, like in the 2019 version, can I grab the notes here?
Oh, yeah, sure. Please, if you've got notes,
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're good ones or not. Interfaith,
Okay.
the Declaration of Interreligion Commitment.
Mm-hmm.
They showed a video on that when they were going to the vote on that, and to me, it was a fiasco.
Okay.
What I mean is, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So there was, however, one moment of concern in interfaith perspective. An amendment had been submitted calling a section of the policy statement inconsistent with Scripture, which was proposed striking some of the language of the statement under the heading limits of our employment. The author of the motion was based the challenges on John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. In the amendment, he wrote, we have a clear statement that Jesus was fully God, fully man. We do. Therefore, I have a basis to know that God's view on religion that do not require faith in Jesus Christ as God's Son. And he said, speaking from the floor, I am here to speak. This is the man that wanted to make the amendment. Speaking from the floor, I'm here to speak truth and power, even if it's conventional truth. I would urge the assembly to repudiate and repent from false teachings. And basically, as the motion was amended, there's the only person that come to the microphone stated, I'm embarrassed that we are having this conversation in front of our guests. The motion was amended and overwhelmingly defeated the policy statement and was adopted. And this person, if you don't mind, person continues on. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm writing this policy statement as adopted, but I'm also disappointed that this is a very appropriate question that was not adequately addressed. To be fair, I doubt that it could have been adequately addressed in the context of the amendment discussion at the time. But to me, I see that and I understand that it's like that I would like somebody to explain to me, especially the second part. I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. What was wrong with that statement?
And I wasn't at the 19 Assembly, so I'm going off of memory here. So my understanding of the document that was passed was not that it was a document proclaiming universalism, but that the ELCA desires to be a conversation partner in interfaith dialogue. That we are committed to being in conversation, to being respectful, to being open to conversation with people of diverse faiths around the world. Certainly, in our own confession of faith as a church, John 14:6 holds a ton of power, and that is still the belief of this church. Our Constitution still reads that we believe that Scripture is the Word of God, that it is and I'm reaching here, but I believe the language is that it is the authoritative source and norm of our faith and life, that it guides everything we do. But that in our conversation in interfaith dialogue, there may, and this might be some of the troubling part, there has been a change. We don't approach those conversations from a sense of conversion, but rather from a sense of conversation. And maybe that's the place where, again, I wasn't at that 19 Assembly, but maybe that's the place where the amendments just was not appropriate because the document wasn't a declaration that John 14:6 is not in effect in our own faith, but that it would unnecessarily have put a wedge in our conversations with our interfaith conversations moving forward. I would have to, I'll be honest, I would have to dig into that a little bit more. But this is the way that we approach those conversations as a church is as a partner in God's Word and as witnesses of our statement, of our belief that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But not out of the sense of we are entering these conversations to correct or convert. And that is different than the ways things have been done previously. But we are in a world that is more and more pluralistic when it comes to religion. And the section that you quoted from there is also very appropriately titled "The Limits of Our Knowing." And that's where we do have to acknowledge that when you are a person of faith, you have to recognize that what God has revealed to you may not be the same thing that God has revealed to others. And especially in a world that is no longer converting people by force, which is a good thing, there has to be mutual respect and conversation. And that's where I wonder if that amendment might not have been enacted quite the way that the person you're quoting there was talking about. Does that answer the question?
That's fine.
Did I get anything blatantly wrong? Was I incorrect on anything?
But the ELCA is a top-down. Is that true?
Top down is, it's such a weird thing. Yes, we have a presiding bishop, we have a church-wide office. And this is actually somewhat up in the air because we've got this commission for a renewed Lutheran church that's going to be looking at everything, including our definition of who we are as a church. The way the ELCA was built was we are one church in three expressions. We are congregations, we are synods, and we are church-wide. No one expression of the church is the church, and no one expression of the church can dictate absolutely to the others. So when we have a synod assembly, there's a limit to what assembly can require congregations to do. And when we have a church-wide assembly, there's a limit to what the church-wide organization can require synods to do. Now those are legislative processes. They are moments for deliberation. The 2009 church-wide assembly is a great example of that, where a very tense and very anxious discussion was held after a 6-year process of conversation about human sexuality, and the voting members in that room voted the current sexuality statement into practice. That does hold legislative authority in our church. The same way that, for example, LB 574 was passed at the Nebraska legislature on Friday. So many days. So there were people that thought that 574 is a terrible idea, but the legislative process did what it does, and that is going to be law when the governor signs it. So that's the way it works. So top down is not the word I would use, because Bishop Eaton can't just snap her fingers and people jump. Well, she'd like to sometimes. I certainly would sometimes, but that's not the way that we really want that office to work. So we do our, and we're not perfect with this either. We do our best to live out the agreements that we make as an entire church with one another. And we also do our best to try and make sure that those requirements aren't too onerous or burdensome for our congregations, because we're in ministry together. We're here to support you, not to force people into things. Other questions?
Is there some sort of a willingness or a direction? Maybe that they want us to sister church?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
If in order to get a pastor, we can't get one, if they want us to sister church, and if we get something, it wants to try to provide churches as well.
That is, it's an option. I can only speak for myself and the current mobility staff, and I think this was true previously too. We are trying to find pastors for all our open congregations. And I can tell you that until we got word that there was a vote that was actually scheduled, we've been giving Salem Ponca's profile to people that have expressed interest in serving in the Nebraska Synod. We can't force them to take interviews. We can't, that's, again, because we're not top down. We're not Methodists. Methodist bishops can appoint pastors and move them where they need them to go. There are times I would really love to have that power. Most of the time I don't want that because I'm not smart enough to know where people are going to meet the best fits. It really does need to be an interview process. Would a partnership with another congregation be helpful to you? Possibly. Something we can explore. And there are options all over the place. And one of the reasons that I asked Heidi Wallace to be one of my assistants is she served a Lutheran Presbyterian congregation in Lyons, and so she has experience with our full communion partners. That is her focus in her work, is congregations that are either in shared ministry settings or are exploring those options as a means of being a church in a changing Nebraska landscape. And that's the other part of this too, is we're trying to be responsive to how Nebraska is changing as well. I'm sure you've all seen that population is growing in Lancaster County, Douglas County, Sarpy County, Cass and Sanders, and most of the rest of the state is either holding steady or experiencing population drain because agriculture has changed over the last 100 years. No one's done anything wrong. Well, maybe Monsanto and Cargill and those. But I mean, it's not bad that farmers can farm more land now, but there's only so much land to be farmed. And I remember my dad being able to make a living working with his dad, and they had about 500 acres between the two of them, and they supported families with that. You can't do that anymore. And there's only so many jobs in small communities to go around. And so the population is changing. That's not to say that we have all of the answers. I do not want the synod to come in telling a congregation we've got all the answers. We don't. We can be conversation partners, and we can maybe help you see some opportunities that might be there for you. But the decisions are still going to be yours to make. It goes back to that whole thing. Pastors don't do ministry only. They also equip congregation members for ministry